Representative Paul Thissen is tasked with leading the House minority. He's here now to discuss what's next. Representative Thissen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's begin with you. Like Senator Bach, traveled the state as a gubernatorial candidate. Did you get any kind of a sense that voters were so discontent, for lack of a better word, and that there'd be this kind of shift post-election?
Well, I think clearly there is a lot of anxiety out all across Minnesota because of the economy and what's happening to families' economic security, you know, losing houses, losing jobs, losing health care. So that clearly has been out there for a long time. You know, I think what message this election was about is going to be hard to decipher. You know, we lost the majority by less than 400 votes. You know, there's 6 seats that, you know, totaled up are less than 400 votes. I think the clear messages that I take from it are, first of all, this was not an election where the people of Minnesota wanted either party to go off in an extreme direction. You know, and I think that we need to take that to heart. And I think the other important thing to remember is that a majority of Minnesotans voted for a gubernatorial candidate who was willing to say we need revenues, we need taxes as part of our solution to balance the budget. And again, I hope that people take that to heart as we approach that huge challenge.
As the new minority leader, you stated in a news conference recently that you plan to work with the majority to move Minnesota forward, yet hold the GOP accountable for its decisions. So what's going to be your style as you approach this?
Well, you know, we have had a lot of partisan bickering, I think, in the state, a lot of bomb throwing, if you will. I don't think that's been very productive for Minnesota. I don't think that that's helped move anybody's agenda of a better Minnesota forward. So I think the best approach, and my approach, which is, you know, I started out in the minority. I've been half my career in the minority, half in the majority. I was very effective working across the aisle. I want to make sure that we are engaged in a constructive manner. But I think the role of the minority is to say, okay, you're responsible for governing, and you make the decisions, and what our job is to point out the consequences of those decisions and say there are alternatives, and point them out in a way that's not kind of rhetorically grand, but that really, so Minnesotans can understand, what does this mean in my everyday life?
And with so many new House Majority members, Representative Dean, the new majority leader, just called them an exceptionally talented pool, and he considers it his job to draw out the talent of each member. So what do you consider your job as minority leader?
Well, I will tell you that our caucus is incredibly energized. We're not feeling beaten down, which would be kind of a reaction that some people would have. And we too have a lot of very talented people, and we represent every single part of the state still as a caucus. And so, you know, I am very interested in making sure that we draw out the strengths and talents of our members, and not just here in the Capitol, but having our members get outside the Capitol and really talk to Minnesotans in their communities about what's going on in their communities and what's going on here in St. Paul, and how those two things can come together.
Job creation and reducing healthcare spending are issues that each caucus agrees upon. But how to do so remains obviously vastly different. Can you find compromise in these areas?
Well, certainly on job creation we can. I think the DFL, last year's angel investor tax credit and the job creation bill that went behind that was a bipartisan effort. I think there's a model there for moving forward. Clearly, we want to work together on getting people back to work, not just taking care of the job creators, but the people doing the work as well. You know, on healthcare costs, I think there has been historically some buy-in, and I think what the DFL legislature over the last 4 years has done to really get after healthcare costs and to pay for healthcare in a smarter way, and to make sure that people have more access to healthcare. We've been leaders in the country, and I hope we continue to build on that.
Protecting sacred cows is going to be very difficult in a minority position. How do you intend to try to achieve this?
Well, I don't know if there are any sacred cows, you know, I think everything, you know, needs to be on the table as we look at this budget deficit. You know, I think the most important thing is that we stand up for the values that our candidates believe in. And, you know, before Election Day, the challenges that we're facing this state are exactly the same as the challenges facing us after Election Day. Majority shifted, but the things that are confronting Minnesotans have remained the same, and we're going to continue to try to attack and address those challenges consistent with our DFL values, consistent with Minnesota values as much as we can.
The big unknown at this point remains the gubernatorial race, as we have touched upon briefly. So on a broad level, do you think there's enough room for compromise between the legislature and Mark Dayton, if he is indeed the new governor, to move Minnesota forward?
Well, first of all, I think there's no doubt that Mark Dayton is going to be the next governor of Minnesota. And I mean, 9,000 votes is very different than 200 votes. And I think it's really important that Minnesota move right away to getting a governor in place because of the huge challenges that we are facing. I do think that there's going to be room to compromise. There will have to be room to compromise. You know, running a political campaign is different than governing. I think the Republican majorities will learn that very quickly if they don't already know it, and I'm sure they do. Governor Dayton is going to learn that as well. But again, what I come back to is one of the main lessons of this November 2nd election was that the majority of Minnesotans did say we want a balanced solution to our budget deficit, and we don't want to go in extreme directions in either way. So fair and progressive taxes, I think, does need to be part of the solution, as well as some really tough cuts. And that is where I believe our caucus is. That's, you know, where I am. That's where we have been for a long time, and we will continue to be.
You talked about being energized. Will there be some frustration if that indeed does not happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think my caucus is very committed to getting done on time and doing it in a fair and productive way. We want to be constructive. You know, I think whether there's frustration among members, I think is less important than whether there's frustration among Minnesotans in general. You know, clearly Minnesotans are frustrated with the way government, you know, has been working. I think that's a bipartisan problem, and we need to come together to solve that.
Mr. Minority Leader, we're out of time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.